Some players are so dominant, so disruptive, so downright unfair. The only way to stop them was to rewrite the rulebook. This isn't about stats or trophies. It's about impact. It's about the rare few who bent the game so far, the NFL had to step in and say, no more. From Deacon Jones slapping helmets off heads to Patrick Mahomes breaking zone coverage in real time, these are the rule changers. The players who were so good or so dangerous, the league changed the game to contain them. These are the NFL's living, breathing loopholes. And here's their story. Deacon Jones and the death of the head slap. He called it the ear hole. One violent swing of the arm, one moment of disorientation, one legal way to erase the man across from him. Deacon Jones turned pass, rushing into psychological warfare. He wasn't just trying to beat offensive linemen, he was trying to knock them into next week. And he did, over and over. The head slap wasn't subtle. It wasn't strategic. It was brutality, wrapped in a legal football move. And Deacon perfected it. He'd explode off the line, launch his hand sideways into a lineman's helmet, ringing their ears, throwing off their balance, and giving himself a free lane to the quarterback. No finesse, no tricks, just pure violence. And it worked. So well, in fact, that the league couldn't keep ignoring it. Offensive linemen were suffering regular concussions. Ear damage became common. Deacon reportedly bragged about ringing his opponent's bell so hard they didn't remember the play. Head slaps should be illegal, one lineman said at the time, but no one's got the guts to stop him. Eventually they did. In 1977, the NFL officially banned the head slap. It was one of the first times the league admitted that some football moves, even legal ones, just weren't acceptable anymore. Deacon Jones had forced that conversation, not through controversy, through dominance. And while the sack wasn't even an official stat in his day, Deacon's impact was impossible to ignore. He'd go on to say, "The head slap was my signature. It made me who I am." But the NFL had moved on, because of him. And from one outlaw move to another, we go from raw violence to pure smothering. Welcome to the Mel Blount rule. Mel Blount and the birth of the 5-yard contact rule. Covering Mel Blount was hard. Getting off the line against him, nearly impossible. He didn't just play physical, he played punishing. At 6 feet 3 inches, 210 pounds, he looked like a linebacker, but lined up at cornerback. Wide receivers couldn't get into their routes. Sometimes, they couldn't get off the line at all. Mel would punch, grab, jam, shove, and bully receivers for 20 yards downfield. And in the 70s, it was all legal. You could contact a receiver until the ball was in the air. So that's what he did. Every play, every route, every snap. It worked so well that passing games basically disappeared. Quarterbacks held the ball, routes got rerouted, and scoring fell off a cliff. By 1978, the league had seen enough. The NFL wanted more offense, more points, more viewers. And Mel Blount was standing in the way. So they passed a rule. No more contact beyond 5 yards. The Mel Blount rule didn't just change the Steelers' defense, it changed football. Suddenly, corners had to play with their feet, not their fists. The entire position shifted toward speed and technique. Wide receivers became stars. The passing boom of the 80s? It started here. Mel Blount didn't get worse. He adjusted and still made the Hall of Fame. But the league made it clear. One man shouldn't be allowed to shut down an entire era of offense. From sticky coverage to actual stickiness, the next player took advantage of grip until the league took it away. Lester Hayes and the Stickum ban. When quarterbacks threw toward Lester Hayes, the ball didn't just get intercepted, it got absorbed. That's because Lester didn't just use Stickum, he bathed in it. Arms, hands, jersey, socks, covered in a light brown goo that made the football cling to him like Velcro. The man looked like he was dipped in honey. And the results were undeniable. In 1980, Lester had 13 interceptions. Quarterbacks started avoiding him altogether. Coaches knew the ball would stick to him if it got anywhere close. And he wasn't hiding it. "I looked like a cross between a stormtrooper and a flytrap," he once said. It wasn't cheating. Yet. Stickum wasn't banned, but Lester's abuse of it forced the NFL's hand. In 1981, the league passed a full ban on adhesive substances. Gloves were fine. Stickum was not. Unofficially, it became known as the Lester-Hayes Rule. Lester's numbers dipped. Critics said the Stickum made his career. Supporters said he still had elite instincts. Either way, the NFL had drawn a line. And that line stuck. Even to this day, players can wear gloves with grip tech, but anything resembling Stickum is still off limits. One player changed the rulebook just by being too good at catching everything. But from gooey picks to legal loopholes, the next player used the rulebook itself to change football history. Tom Brady in the tuck rule era. Ask a Raiders fan about the tuck rule, and you might want to take a step back. January 2002. Snow falling in Foxborough. Brady drops back, gets hit by Charles Woodson. Fumbles. Game over, right? Wrong. Referees review it. Call it an incomplete pass. Why? Because of an obscure rule. If a quarterback's arm is moving forward while tucking the ball back in, it's an incomplete pass, not a fumble. It was the right call by the rulebook. But to fans, it felt like robbery. The Patriots won that game, then won the Super Bowl, then won 5 more over the next 2 decades. That moment, that call, it launched a dynasty. And that rule? It defined Brady's early legacy. The tuck rule became one of the most infamous loopholes in football history. So infamous, the NFL quietly got rid of it in 2013. Too vague, too technical, too Brady. And while the Patriots didn't write the rule, they certainly benefited from it. Brady became the poster child for smart, legal manipulation of the game's gray areas, from motion calls to snap timing to, yes, even the rulebook. The tuck rule didn't just change one game, it changed how fans see the rulebook and how legends are born through its loopholes. Now, from technicality to terror, the next guy didn't finesse his way into the rulebook. He ran straight through it. Devin Hester and the death of the kick return. You couldn't kick to Devin Hester, not unless you wanted to be on SportsCenter. He was electricity in motion, the rare player who could take a dead ball moment and flip it into a game changer. In his prime, punters kicked away from him. Fans held their breath. Coaches screamed at kick coverage teams to stay in their lanes. Hester didn't just return kicks, he destroyed them. 20 total return touchdowns, including 4 in one season. And the most iconic of all, a kickoff return to open Super Bowl 41, the only time it's ever happened. But with every return touchdown, the league's stomach turned. Kickoffs were dangerous, full-speed collisions, no blockers, no hesitation. And with players like Hester breaking the game open, teams loaded up with speedsters to match. Chaos followed, so the NFL made a change. In 2011, kickoffs were moved from the 30-yard line to the 35, making touchbacks more common. Fewer returns, fewer highlight plays, and fewer Devin Hesters. The rule was for safety, but it had side effects. Return specialists stopped getting drafted. Teams prioritized coverage over explosiveness. Special teams started to shrink in influence. And just like that, the most exciting play in football, the kickoff return, began to die. Because of Devin Hester. From field position to quarterback collisions, we now move to the next man who blurred the line between signal caller and sledgehammer. Cam Newton and the QB as power runner. Cam Newton didn't just play quarterback, he redefined what the position could be. He was built like a linebacker, moved like a tailback, and played like a cheat code. In short yardage, defenses didn't have an answer. If you stacked the box, he'd jump over it. If you stayed back, he'd plow through. He wasn't sliding. He wasn't stepping out. He was lowering his shoulder and daring you to stop him. At 6 feet 5 inches, 250 pounds, Cam was too big for safeties and too fast for linebackers. Teams designed run plays for him. QB powers, sweeps, options. He wasn't just part of the offense. He was the offense. And that's where the NFL's rulebook started to sweat. Because when Cam ran, defenders didn't know how to hit him. Was he a quarterback or a runner? Did he get the same protection? Should he? The league didn't have an answer. Referees seemed hesitant to throw roughing flags. Late hits went uncalled. Some defenders even said they got coached to treat Cam like a running back once he left the pocket. Newton took beating after beating, and it was obvious. Fans noticed. Analysts called it out. If that was Brady, that flag's out. Became a weekly refrain. But the league stayed gray. His style led to inconsistent enforcement of late hit and roughing the passer rules. Every time he was hit, it sparked a debate. Are quarterbacks allowed to be this physical? And more importantly, should they still get the protections? Cam's career became the test case, and the NFL failed that test. The ambiguity in how refs treated him led to injuries, missed calls, and eventually a quieter decline. But his impact never left. Today's quarterbacks, Allen, Hurts, Richardson, all borrow from Cam's blueprint, but they do so in a league that's now much more careful with how QB runs are officiated. Cam kicked down the door. The NFL scrambled to rewrite the house rules. Now, from unstoppable motion to unguardable mass, the next player made covering tight ends almost feel unfair. Rob Gronkowski and the body type dilemma. Rob Gronkowski was a mismatch from birth. Too fast for linebackers. Too big for safeties. Too physical for anyone. When Gronk lined up, defenses didn't have a right answer. Just a list of wrong ones. One-on-one, he'd truck you. Zone, he'd find the hole and stiff arm you into next week. So defenders did the only thing they could. Hold him. Grab him. Tug him. Wrap him up before the ball even got there. And most of the time, they got away with it. Patriots games turned into holding clinics. Defensive backs would hang on like toddlers riding a Gronk roller coaster. It got so bad that the NFL had to clarify illegal contact, specifically because nobody could defend him without fouling. Officials started throwing more flags. Gronk wasn't just drawing DPI, he was teaching the league what it looked like. By 2015, the rulebook emphasis was crystal clear. No more mugging the tight end. And still he dominated. The league had never seen anything quite like him. Tony Gonzalez and Antonio Gates had paved the way, but Gronk was different. He was more violent, more punishing. He didn't finesse his way into separation. He bullied you. Eventually, teams had to scheme for him. Double teams, brackets, safety help over the top. None of it really worked. Gronk still scored, still broke tackles, still turned short passes into steamrolls. He became the template. Tight ends went from sidekicks to superheroes. But Gronk's dominance also exposed how ill-equipped the rulebook was to handle someone that big, fast, and skilled. And speaking of rewriting playbooks, the next player didn't just break coverage, he forced it to evolve entirely. Patrick Mahomes, and the death of traditional zone. Patrick Mahomes plays quarterback like he's in a sandbox. But for defenses, it's a maze with no exits. Once Mahomes took over in 2018, everything changed. He could throw from any platform, roll left, flick right, no-look passes, deep bombs, sidearm lasers. The arm was generational. The improvisation, unstoppable. But it wasn't just what he did, it was how defenses reacted. Traditional zone coverage relies on timing. Rush 4, drop 7, and make the quarterback beat you with patience. Mahomes destroyed that idea. His mobility gave him extra seconds, and those extra seconds turned zones into Swiss cheese. Defensive coordinators had to invent new concepts just to slow him down. Drop 8 coverage, rushing 3 and flooding the field with defenders, became popular. Some teams built entire game plans around quarterback spies, even though Mahomes wasn't a runner. Just keeping him in the pocket became a win. Then came the ripple effects. Coaches started drilling defensive linemen on pass rush lane discipline, so Mahomes couldn't escape. Teams began coaching linebackers to cover longer than ever before, and even the ineligible man downfield rule had to be emphasized, because Mahomes' extended plays pushed linemen into awkward spots. Every young quarterback now gets compared to him. Every defense now has to be ready for Mahomes' rules, even if they're not playing the Chiefs. And if Mahomes made you pay post-snap, the next guy punished you before the snap ever happened. Troy Polamalu and the line scrimmage ambush. You didn't read Troy Polamalu, he read you. He played like he had the offensive playbook in his hands. He'd line up at safety, shift to linebacker, then bolt toward the line and leap over it. He was everywhere, and somehow, always right. He became famous for timing the snap perfectly, jumping over the center, diving into gaps, causing chaos. And it worked. Offenses were frozen. Quarterbacks couldn't audible. O-lines didn't know who to block. It was disruptive. It was legal. And it broke the game. So the league stepped in. Eventually, they passed new restrictions on leaping and launching over the line, especially on field goals and short yardage plays. Too dangerous, they said. Too unpredictable. But it wasn't just the leaps. Polamalu also changed how defenses disguise blitzes. He'd wander pre-snap like a ghost, forcing QBs to guess. That movement forced teams to develop protection rules and hot reads that could adapt on the fly. And it changed DB behavior too. Pre-snap motion from safeties became its own art form, but few ever did it like Troy, because he didn't just fake it. He knew what was coming, and if Polamalu manipulated space, the next man owned it, completely. Darrelle Revis and the island effect. Darrelle Revis didn't need help. He was the help. Teams stopped throwing at him. Quarterbacks looked the other way. Offensive coordinators drew up routes and then erased them when they saw where Revis lined up. Revis Island wasn't just a nickname. It was a no-fly zone. For a stretch of seasons, WR1s vanished. Stats plummeted. Highlight reels dried up. And the NFL noticed. Officials started allowing more physicality during Revis' peak. They wanted to let them play. But as offenses complained about being mugged downfield, the league backtracked. Suddenly, the 5-yard contact rule got stricter. Flags came faster. Holding and illegal contact surged. Defensive backs had to change, because one corner had mastered the old way too well. Even without stats, Revis changed the game. He made teams rethink offensive schemes. Why isolate your best WR when he's just going to disappear? Better to scheme around the island than try to survive on it. And just like that, the NFL shifted again. One player, one island, a whole new set of rules. Ndamukong Suh and the personal conduct. Crackdown. Ndamukong Suh was a nightmare, and not in the usual highlight reel way. He didn't just sack quarterbacks. He stepped on them, literally. During his early years with the Detroit Lions, Suh wasn't just physical. He was reckless. He played with anger, hit late, pushed after the whistle. Quarterbacks feared him, but so did the league office. It started piling up. Fines, warnings, then suspensions. The lowlights went viral. Suh stepping on Aaron Rodgers' leg. Suh kicking a lineman on the ground. Suh finishing a play and then finishing a player. The media labeled him the NFL's dirtiest player. Fans debated whether he was out of control or just intense. But the NFL didn't debate anything. They acted. After a decade of growing concerns about player safety, Suh became the face of a new campaign. A crackdown on unnecessary roughness, especially after the play. The rules didn't just target Suh, but he became the poster child. Officials were instructed to watch for extra activity, late hits, pile driving, foot stomps, the kind of behavior that turned the game from violent to dangerous. His name came up in meetings. Refs got new guidelines. Teams started coaching players how not to be Suh. But here's the thing. Suh wasn't a goon. He was smart. He graduated early from Nebraska. He knew the rulebook, and as the NFL adapted to him, he adapted right back. Over time, he cleaned it up, played smarter, Still nasty, but just inside the line. Yet the impact stuck. His early career helped shift how the NFL thinks about personal conduct on the field. Not just penalties, but fines, reputation, and league image. And while Sue changed the tone of violence, the next man changed how violence could feel, even when it was legal. Ray Lewis and the intimidation factor. Ray Lewis never needed to break the rules. He made you fear the ones that already existed. His hits were clean, mostly, but they were violent. Legal, sure, but they felt illegal. Receivers stopped running across the middle. Tight ends cut their routes short. Coaches called plays away from him, and the NFL watched it all happen. Lewis didn't just make tackles, he created hesitation. His presence affected behavior. Quarterbacks flinched. Backs hesitated. Even when he didn't make contact, he made plays disappear. Ray was the signal caller, enforcer, and heartbeat of the defense, all wrapped in one. And when one of his crushing hits made highlight reels, it wasn't long before the league office asked, should this still be allowed? That question led to the rise of defenseless receiver protections. The NFL redefined what it meant to be in the process of catching the ball. It introduced language about launching, crown of the helmet, and unnecessary force. Lewis didn't break those rules. He forced the league to write them. He became the symbolic turning point. The last of the truly feared linebackers who operated in a gray zone the NFL was no longer comfortable allowing. And even after he walked away with 2 rings and a Hall of Fame career, the shadow he cast remained. But where Lewis changed the rules with impact, the next player changed them with timing. Aaron Rodgers and the free play genius. For Aaron Rodgers, chaos was opportunity. He didn't just manage a game, he manipulated it. He turned the hard count into a weapon of mass destruction, and it worked. Rodgers trained defenses to fear his cadence. One twitch, one flinch, one step over the line, he'd snap the ball, take the flag, and launch a 40-yard bomb downfield. And 9 times out of 10, it worked. Defenses started hesitating. Pass rushers got slower off the line. Blitzes backed off. All because they didn't want to be the guy who gifted Rodgers another free play. It was brilliant and totally legal, but the NFL started to notice that no one else could do what Rodgers was doing. He wasn't reacting to the game, he was controlling it. Soon, officials began reviewing the rulebook, clarifying what counted as a live play after offsides. Coaches started drilling their defenses to freeze, not jump. Broadcasts began explaining Rodgers' cadence like it was chess theory. Rodgers didn't need new rules written because he broke the old ones. He needed them clarified because he mastered them. He gamed the system so well that the system had to catch up. And while he exposed defenses mentally, the next player challenged them physically, with pure speed. Michael Vick and the speed panic. There had been mobile quarterbacks before, but no one ran like Michael Vick. He was faster than safeties, more elusive than cornerbacks. And unlike other QBs, he wanted to run. And when he did, he changed the geometry of the field. Defensive coordinators had no answer. Traditional QB spies couldn't keep up. Edge contain? Irrelevant. When Vic broke the pocket, it was like watching a point guard in pads, jukes, spin moves, acceleration. One broken contain, and he was gone. It was pure panic. So defenses evolved, slowly, begrudgingly. Vic forced the invention of the athlete defender, hybrids who could run with receivers and tackle like linebackers. Schemes adjusted. Outside leverage became gospel. Every team started drafting rangier defenders just in case they faced Vic, even though most never did. And when Vic tore up the Vikings in the playoffs or humiliated the Packers on Monday night, it wasn't just the scoreboard that changed, it was how the league scouted quarterbacks. Suddenly, being mobile wasn't a knock. It was necessary. Vic showed what was possible, what could happen if you couldn't be caught. But while Vic stretched the field, the next guy redefined how far you could stretch the rulebook and the ref's patience without getting flagged. Richard Sherman and the PI tug of war. Richard Sherman didn't cover receivers. He dismantled them. He knew the rules. More importantly, he knew the edges of the rules, the gray areas where officials hesitated. He used his arms, his hips, his body, subtly, smartly, just enough to throw a receiver off without drawing a flag. It worked so well, it changed how games were called. Sherman didn't just jam at the line, he held just long enough. He pulled just lightly enough. He turned pass interference into an interpretation, not a call. And his reputation? It only helped. Refs gave him leeway. Fans called it physical. Offenses called it infuriating. By the time Sherman sealed the 2013 NFC Championship with a tip and a scream, "Don't you ever talk about me," the NFL had heard enough. Coaches were furious. Players demanded clarity. So in 2014, the league told refs, enforce the rules by the book. Illegal contact, defensive holding, DPI, all of it. Flags flew everywhere. It got so bad that in 2019, the NFL allowed teams to challenge pass interference, a direct response to years of gray area coverage like Sherman's. The result? A total mess. The rule lasted 1 year and was tossed, but the message was clear. Players like Richard Sherman could tip the balance of a game and the rule book just by being too smart for the current system. Every era has its enforcers, its innovators, and its chaos agents, but only a few reshaped the game entirely. These weren't just great players, they were turning points. And long after the plays fade, the rules they inspired remain. Because when the league changes for you, that's true legacy.